Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and in today's video, we'll be taking a look at some Tuesday updates. We already were expecting some class buffs and nerfs, but primarily buffs, but it looks like Blizzard has tagged on some nerfs for a few classes, mostly for PvP. And we'll also be taking a look at a variety of different nerfs, even more nerfs for Mythic Plus dungeons. The nerfs I think is a good thing because the dungeons are quite difficult with this expansion and Blizzard is continuing to nerf them over and over. Probably it's a good idea to nerf them right now because they'll only scale higher and higher as the seasonal Mythic Plus stuff progresses. So that should be good news, especially for all of you that are trying to cap your keys. The necrotic quake nerfs and the massive butchering that they did definitely made that dungeon far easier for a lot of people just to complete their weeklies. So this is going to be more along those same lines just for some of the other instances. So let me just stop rambling about all this and let's take a look at some of the updates of this Tuesday reset Wednesday for EU. In another video, we took a look at some of the different class updates that Blizzard decided to implement for this Tuesday. This isn't going to be anything that's meta changing, and a long story short, it's a lot of 5%, 3% buffs for a variety of different specs that are slightly behind, just to shore up the differences between top competing specs and low competing specs, primarily for Castle Nathria DPS. All the numbers as well as the tuning behind them, the 5%, the 3% for a variety of different specs, didn't change at all. So what we talked about with the last video, talking about these upcoming class buffs and the buffs we have here, it looks like nothing changed. Blizzard didn't add anything extra or decide to do any kind of PvE nerfs on top of it. However, for PvP, we do have some minor nerfs. For Frost Death Knight, we are going to be seeing their cleave potential diminish slightly because you're still getting your 5% damage buff for all your abilities, but you do get a nerf for Chill Streak, the PvP talent, damage nerf by 10%. Then we also have Arms Warriors, where you're still getting your 3% damage buff, but the Master and Commander PvP talent reduces the cooldown of Rallying Cry only by 60 seconds instead of 120, so that means you'll be able to use Rallying Cry a lot less often. We're seeing a similar thing happening with Fury Warriors, where you're still gaining your 3% buff just like Arms, and you're also seeing Master and Commander PvP talent getting nerfed just like Arms. Nerfing Arms I think makes sense because it already has a lot of utility as is and great damage in PvP, but I don't know if nerfing Fury for PvP is going to be that much. We already don't see enough Fury Warriors, and maybe Blizzard could have kept that buff for Fury in particular. I really do think Blizzard should do something for Fury for PvP in order to give it a little bit of an equal footing with Arms. Maybe that's something they'll consider in the future patches, but for now that's all we really get. We also got a small update for anybody that plays Night Fae. I think this one will be the best for PvP, where once the pod tender ability is activated when the player is dead, the player inside the pod will be dropped from targeting, and they'll try to make the targeting of the pod itself easier to target. So it should be much easier for you to pick up exactly what the health bar of the pod is, whether you're trying to kill it or slay it. So hopefully that update makes seeing where the pod is, how much health it has, and being able to take it down far easier. Then we have a massive slew of PvE changes for a lot of the Mythic Plus dungeons. A lot of good changes for the most part, so I kind of just want to go over them off the bat. First, we have a nerf to the Tyrannical Affix, which is a much welcome nerf. I think a lot of us can agree Tyrannical Affix basically means it's dead weak for pushing keys. Not a lot of people like Tyrannical Affix, or at least I don't know anybody that really enjoys it. There are some dungeons where Tyrannical Affix and certain other affixes combine together, but Tyrannical is still much harder than Fortified. I feel like more dungeons with more affix varieties are more open for actual pushes and completions and timing than Tyrannical weaks. So Tyrannical is getting nerfed with this Tuesday Wednesday reset to 30% of boss increased health instead of 40. So bosses will see a 10% health nerf. This is a good thing, especially if you're going to be pushing for higher keys. As you'll be trying to go for higher keys, bosses will have more health, and then Tyrannical will end up scaling just slightly less harder on the group. Especially at higher end keys where bosses are doing incredible amounts of damage, almost one-shotting players, and healer cooldowns and tank cooldowns, and everybody's personals are very valuable. You never want to waste them. So when you have a boss that has a lot more health, it means you got to be doing that boss fight far longer. The boss hits even harder, and sometimes for healers that's just almost impossible on the mana management. So this is a nice nerf. But honestly, I think Blizzard might want to take out Tyrannical and Fortified altogether. Now, Fortified isn't that bad, but Tyrannical is pretty bad, and I understand why Blizzard wants to buff the ads or buff the boss. When you have the week where you buff the ads, you mostly will go for an AoE setup. When you go for the boss buffs, you'll try to prioritize single target, but I feel like you create a dichotomy where on Tyrannical weeks, not a lot of people really push, not a lot of people really try super hard in keys. And when you have Fortified, you have a lot of people that really want to push because it's much better than Tyrannical, so this will be your chance to get into some keys, pushing your Mythic Pluses. But what if Blizzard were to just upscale the mobs just by a little, the ads as the boss as well, but take out Fortified and Tyrannical altogether? I really think that's something that should be under consideration going forward and maybe potentially even tested in a future patch. I think it could be really good and it would make every single week, no matter the affixes, a viable push week. You'll just have to scale the ads and the boss a little bit more evenly. But I really think it could be good going forward and definitely would make certain weeks less of, okay, well, I'm not going to do my Mythic Pluses, and certain weeks, okay, let's do as many Mythic Pluses as we can because it's a good week. Eliminate the good week, bad week, and just give us weeks with different affixes for us to do our dungeons, but having bosses and ads scale more evenly rather than one is stronger or the other is stronger. Taking a look at some of the dungeon changes, we're seeing some impactful ones like with the other side. In the other side, with a Mecha Gnome Quarter, you have the Headless Clients, which are some of the first mobs you see after you cross into that side of the dungeon. Those guys do quite a lot of damage and they tear through groups pretty quickly. So both the tank mechanic of taking the melee hits and the discharge ability are also pretty heavily nerfed, which is a good thing. They also nerfed Arf, making them do less tank damage, and the ability of Woof, which has a stun effect to it, will now not prioritize tanks. This is quite significant because tanks would often get stunned by Woof, and then the mini boss would do Metallic Jaws, and while the tank is stunned, they can't mitigate any of the damage, so they just get obliterated in a single chomp. Unless you're a Demon Hunter that can leap away, get stunned, and by the time the stun wears off, you can now mitigate the mini boss and all the damage it does. So this helps out the non-mobile tanks and just makes it that much easier to deal with. You also have changes to Mistletoe Scythe, one of the easiest dungeons possible, and I hope to keep it as easy as it is because it's actually enjoyable to do. Dress Soul Cleaver Soul Split damage though on tanks was quite brutal, so that's getting almost a 50% nerf. Fall, Rotting, Slime Claws, Corroded Claws, also a tank killer, and if the tank is nowhere nearby, group killer, as they'll just randomly claw anyone near them, so that's also getting nerfed, which is a good thing. In Sanguine Depths, you have the Chamber Sentinel's Severing Slice, which isn't going to obliterate somebody on a first global, but the dot I think is still going to do a lot of damage. Frenzied Ghouls, which are actually quite often pulled by a lot of the higher end groups to match the percentage to get Prideful for every boss, and those guys are getting nerfed as well since they're actually getting pulled. In Spires of Ascension, they also are nerfing the Ether Diver's Venom, again, another mechanic that just destroys tank. Forsworn Kyrian Dark Lash also has a longer cast time, another mechanic that usually just obliterates tanks. They also nerfed more mobs from Necrotic Wake, mostly the Bone Carvers, because again, another tank killer ability has been nerfed. And Theater of Pain, more mobs that hurt your tank a lot, also got nerfed. With a note at the bottom saying, we've noticed tanks in Mythic Keystone dungeons feeling pressured to spend more time running away and less time actually tanking than we'd like. In an effort to address this, we're dialing back the tank damage of a number of dungeon denizens who've proven to be particularly painful. There's a reason why Mythic Pluses is right now all about the kite meta. Kiting is tanking, and if you can just kite mobs around and not get hit, well then you don't have to worry about getting slapped by all these powerful and very strong abilities. If Blizzard can curb the kiting meta right now and allow tanks to just go mitigate the damage, take hits to the face, and rotate cooldowns in order to deal with it, with some kiting involved but not being majority kiting, I think that would be good setup for future patches. Tanking in this expansion seems quite difficult in comparison to some of the other expansions like the easiest tanking of Legion for example, so more players are intimidated to even try to do some tanking for Mythic Pluses for example. So hopefully this will get more people trying out to get into Mythic Pluses and try and tank specs if Blizzard continues nerfing some of the tank sore spots that might allow more players an easier time with the Mythic Pluses, which I don't think is a bad thing. And finally, we have a small change for the raiding aspect of the game. Ventus Ruins are going to grant you more versatility. This means getting some of those fights that you Ventus on far easier to deal with. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and hopefully all these dungeon nerfs, especially if you're someone trying to tank in Mythic Pluses, make it that much easier for you to get into some M pluses, get your 10s and even 15s done. overall a good change, and hopefully we'll see more people trying out tanks, and tanks having a far easier time, especially if you're not the fast demon hunters. Thank you all so much for checking out this video. Let me know your thoughts about all these updates, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in another video.